first of all, I agree with the vast majority of what you're saying, right? I do think it's really important to recognize why we choose loans rather than equity, right? And I also think it's important to think about the incentives that exist within these systems. So when you talk about the availability of student loans, the reason that the availability exists is because they are both non-dischargeable and government guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So as an investor, hey, any additional yield I can pick up on that, wonderful. I'm going to make as many of them available as possible. And since they're government guaranteed, I don't actually care what you use them for. Do you use them for housing? Do you use them for partying? Do you use them to take, underwater basket weaving classes in French medieval literature? I'm not necessarily drawing an equivalence between those two. Proust is, a worthy field of study for many, although I realize, again, that's not medieval. But, we rob a system of price signals that would allow somebody to say, hey, wait a second, if I'm going to go to MIT and get a degree in computer science or electrical engineering, that is a far less risky outcome than if I'm going to go to a very mediocre private school that offers a wonderful social experience, where I'm going to study, I'm going to try to pick some, underwater basket weaving and, the particular arts of, various lost Atlantic societies, right? If that's your field of study, you have almost no prospects for employment, but nobody is incentivized anywhere in this process to say that to you, right? You need to actually decide, what are you going to do as a society? What do you want to do? Do you want STEM grads? You know what? Then give them a lower cost loan. Make more credit available to the STEM graduates than to others, right? You want to incentivize.
Well, why does that need to be the model at all? Why can't the model be massively subsidized higher ed, so that students don't need, the tuition doesn't need to be nearly so high, and yet the quality of the education is just as good, or perhaps maybe even better.
Well, we're arguing a spectrum here, right? So a subsidized interest rate is the same thing as subsidies for tuition. It just changes the payout functions. We need to decide how we're going to do that. I would suggest that debt actually.
No, but you're saddling a society rather than saddling an individual.
But you don't have to, right? Because what you're describing, if you were to simply subsidize it, then you'd get an expansion of higher education without any attempt to hold it to quality. Right? A better way to do it, for example, would actually be to introduce an element of debt into it, in which the colleges themselves became first loss carriers. Right? You don't help this kid get a job, you don't create in them a system of responsibility of paying back these loans, guess what? You should go out of business. You should have a substantive disadvantage where you have to charge higher tuitions because you are less likely to collect from the terrible education that you're providing to kids. That is a market mechanism for feedback that we are ignoring. Right? And what will that do? That will drive really, really good colleges to actually expand their operations, because they'll have lower cost access to capital. They'll do a better job of placing students. That'll give them the resources to allow themselves to continue to expand. Where a mechanism simply isn't tuition, it actually becomes, how profitable is that tuition to us? Right, so it's
skin in the game.
Effectively, you want to create skin in the game. Right?